Disney is finally getting back to what they do best, and that's releasing sequels to the movies that have already existed before. But here's what's big. They're doing The Incredibles 3, and they're bringing back someone who left Disney to go work for John Lasseter again. They're bringing Brad Bird back in order to do Incredibles 3. Let's talk about that on That Park Place. Hello, I am Jonas J. Campbell, an investigative reporter for That Park Place, and I am here with secret superhero, Mr. VashSky. Vash, are you ready to get back into those tights and revisit the glory days?
I think I'm just about ready right here. But very important note, though. No capes, that's for sure.
No capes. That being said, go to Scott Gustin here, who is at D23. Incredibles 3, they put up a title card here. This is not Brad Bird right here. That's probably Pete Docter, but Brad Bird working on it now. More on that next time, they say. I think they're meaning next D23. And here is the logo for Incredibles 3 right there. Yeah, that's definitely a 3 in Incredibles. Okay, so Brad Bird has not been working for Disney for some time now. His next film is a film called Ray Gun, and that is being done at Skydance Animation for John Lasseter, who was obviously the I'm going to use a funny word here, exiled former head of Pixar Animation. I'm sorry, chief creative officer of the Walt Disney Company, because he was in charge of Pixar, he was in charge of Walt Disney Animation, and he was also in charge of the creative for the theme parks of the Walt Disney Company. I couldn't even tell you who the chief creative officer of the entire company is at this point, because there's no point in filling that role with anybody that is currently at the company. Maybe you could put somebody like Jon Favreau in that role, but I don't think he would be interested in that. And he's a contractor working for Disney. He's not technically a Disney employee. Although if he shows up at the parks, they ought to just let him in.
Well, they did let him into D23 today, which is very interesting. Show floor, just whisked him right in there. You get some privileges when you produce the work that he has.
Oh, yeah. And well, he is there. He's appearing on panels as well, and he was at the Star Wars panel. But this is not here to be talking about Mr. Jon Favreau. This is to talk about Brad Bird. Obviously, he's had a long history at the Walt Disney Company. First of all, Incredibles is one of the biggest films ever for Pixar, and Incredibles 2, for a very long time, was the #1 animated film ever. And that has now been dethroned a few times over because inflation and things like that happen. But Brad Bird, obviously animation legend Brad Bird, he worked on as part of the Brain Trust for a very long time. He's also the writer of the Incredibles films. So I'm thinking that if he's coming back to direct, he's probably also writing. And just to give a little history here, obviously Brad Bird is an animation legend, started out working with Spielberg on Amazing Stories, did some stuff with The Simpsons. He directed the Do the Bartman video way back in the day, which, by the way, written by Michael Jackson. Obviously, Iron Giant, which is Warner Brothers, but Disney likes to talk about that whenever they can. The Iron Giant, and then came into Disney to do The Incredibles with Pixar. But since then, there's been some ups and some downs here.
I would say so, yes. Well, after the incredible success of The Incredibles, and one that is still looked at fondly by Pixar fans and even superhero fans, well, went on to gain incredible success with Ratatouille as well. But then after that, it's starting to slow a little bit. Now, Brad Bird, if I'm not mistaken, he was the director on Incredibles 2, correct?
He was. But before we got to Incredibles 2, now I have a little ongoing disagreement here. Incredibles 2, not as good as Incredibles 1, but obviously financially very successful. Also got into that area where it seemed to be a commentary on patriarchy and feminism and things like that, where yeah, I don't know if Disney has had much success from there. Also, it ends up being an evil matriarchy in the end and trying to fight against that. But of course, that means that Mrs. Incredible needs to come in and save the day. He did direct a Mission Impossible film. A lot of people forget this, that he directed Mission Impossible Ghost Protocol, which
Right.
was really great and might have borrowed a few ideas from Alias, if I'm remembering correctly. That
Mhm.
one, solid film, and returned the Mission Impossible films to greatness, in my opinion. If I'm thinking of the right one, if that's the third one or the fourth one. There's also that he directed Tomorrowland, which that is not a financial success, obviously. A mixed bag by a lot of people's estimation. I thought the production design on Tomorrowland was fantastic, but it has a few struggles here or there.
Yeah, I like the in park references. Obviously, it starts out with Small World, which is kind of a cool thing. And look, there was some real potential there, and it kind of has a cult following a little bit, but just not very successful at the box office. And it was very strange. The company poured a lot of resources into that, and just didn't turn out well at all. And I believe we were referencing another video in which we referenced Tron Ares, and I was talking about Pirates of the Caribbean, how that film may have been sidelined by that, but actually, as I'm remembering it now, I believe Tron 3 was sidelined by Tomorrowland, which, I mean, that's a swing and a miss there.
Well,
That's for sure.
now you're giving me a reason to dislike Brad Bird, and I don't like you for that right now. No, I like Brad Bird a lot. I think he's an amazing director,
Yes.
and was probably a fantastic addition to the Brain Trust when he ended up there at Pixar. They need to bring that back. I don't know how that's functioning these days. The other thing is that obviously the film Ray Gun has yet to come out from Skydance Animation under John Lasseter, and
Right.
I'm hearing that that one is still waiting to find its final form there. And I don't think Incredibles 3 will happen before that is done, unless that gets canceled. But there is this situation over there with Skydance Animation, with the fact that they've made a deal with Netflix, but they're also partially owned by Skydance, mostly owned by Skydance, sorry, and that Skydance just bought Paramount or will buy Paramount very soon, depending on how this all gets resolved. So there's so many questions in the air about what's going on with Skydance Animation, and whether or not John Lasseter, who's the head there, whether or not he's going to be in charge of Nickelodeon or the entire Paramount Animation apparatus there. So there's so much that's still in flux. We don't know. We haven't seen any previews for Ray Gunn. It's a Gunn, by the way. His name is Ray. His last name is Gunn. That's why I keep saying it in that weird way. So I'm looking forward to hearing more about this as it develops. They obviously need to get Michael Giacchino back to do the soundtrack. I don't think that's going to be difficult. He has an ongoing relationship with Disney and Marvel and all that, obviously doing the soundtrack to Fantastic Four. This is wait and see for me. What about you, Vash?
Definitely wait and see for sure, but this reminds me of a story that, well, we covered here on That Park Place some time ago when we were talking about the brain drain that was occurring within Disney's animation department going over to John Lasseter. You'll recall this story, Jonas, right here from Boardwalk Times, C23. That's where they are. This was from June 5th, 2024. Lindsay Collins, the Senior Vice President of Development of Pixar, runs hypotheticals by her teenage children, including her son Cash. The other day I was like, what if I told you if we were making an Incredibles 3? Again, this is long before the announcement at D23 that just occurred yesterday. And he was like, money grab. And I was like, F. So
Yeah.
it's kind of funny because, well, you the timeline, it appears that, well, this was already in the works at that point, and well, maybe that's why she used that expletive in that specific fashion. By the way, this goes back to a Bloomberg article. We'll have all the links to this in the description. But very, very funny, very, very interesting. And now it's come to fruition here.
Oh, that's a really good point. Also, I think right now Disney is trying to follow through on well, if we are going to do a money grab, what is the best way for us to do that? Of course, there was also the announcement of Toy Story 5. We're going to separate that into its own video because I think that Andrew Stanton and his career has been very different from Brad Bird's career, because Andrew Stanton technically never left Pixar, although he just didn't work on Pixar films, at least in a high name. They're obviously still a part of the story group. I also worked on Obi-Wan Kenobi, interestingly, enough there. So we're going to be talking about that in a separate video. But I don't know. I also don't know when in the world this is going to happen. They say they're not even going to talk about it until the next D23. So I want to throw this to our commenters. What do you think about the announcement of Incredibles 3? And does it make a difference to you that it's Brad Bird who is coming back to direct it and write it, considering, well, Incredibles and Incredibles 2? There's some division there that I would love to hear more about in the comment section down below. Like this video, of course, if you like this video or found it helpful and informative in any way. And of course, if you could, maybe hit the notification bell so you know whenever we go live or post a video. And of course, consider subscribing to That Park Place for all the news that should be fun.
Thanks for watching That Park Place News. For more information, consider checking out www.thatparkplace.com. And don't forget to subscribe, share, like, and send this out on your favorite social media accounts.